Tribunal told about Ansbacher money used to repay loan to Kieran Haughey's company. Mary Harney says there's no question of the Asahi plant staying open. Mo Molan confirms official contacts with Sinn Féin but says there are no negotiations. Good evening. The Duns Payments Tribunal has been told that money from Charles Haughey's accounts in the so-called Ansbacher deposits was used to repay a loan to Celtic Helicopters, the company owned and operated by his son Kieran. Kieran Haughey has denied any knowledge of the payment. Earlier, the tribunal was told that in 1993, Ben Dunn alleged that he paid £1 million to a member of a previous government to influence legislation affecting the family trust.
Kieran Haughey, son of the former Taoiseach, gave evidence to the tribunal this afternoon about a number of loans made to his company, Celtic Helicopters. 4 loans made to the company between 1991 and 1993 were guaranteed by money in the Ansbacher deposits, the offshore accounts into which the £1.3 million paid by Ben Dunn to Charles Haughey were lodged. Kieran Haughey said the late Des Traynor organised the loans, but that he was not aware of the role of the Ansbacher deposits in the guarantees. He had given personal guarantees, and as far as the company was concerned, they were normal commercial loans, which were repaid out of Celtic Helicopters' resources. But the tribunal legal team then produced documents showing that one of the loans, for £150,000, was repaid out of the S8 account in the Ansbacher deposits, where Charles Haughey's money was kept. Kieran Haughey said he had no knowledge of this. Earlier, Cork accountant Bernard Uniacke, a member of the Dunn Settlement Trust, gave evidence about a phone call from Ben Dunn in June 1993, the day after the board of the company discussed his removal as an executive director. Mr Dunn was clearly still upset and threatened to make public an allegation that he had paid £1 million to a member of a previous government to influence legislation affecting the trust. Mr Uniacke said that he regarded this as an empty threat made in the heat of the moment. In his own evidence, Mr Dunn said he couldn't recall the conversation in question, but agreed that he had made some very stupid threats at the time because of the ferocious pressure he was under. He added that in fact he had never tried to influence legislation and agreed that he dropped his allegation that the trust was a sham when he settled his legal action against other members of the family. Mr Dunn also said that Mr Haughey never thanked him or even acknowledged that he received the payments. He declined to answer when asked if this appeared ungrateful, but agreed it did seem a bit odd in retrospect. Mr Dunn said his offer last February to pay £1 million towards Charles Haughey's potential tax liability was made because he wanted a quick end to the Duns Payments Tribunal, and that the offer was dependent on Mr Haughey making a full statement. Mr Justice Brian McCracken observed that such a statement would certainly have speeded up the work of the tribunal.
Well, Charlie Byrne joins me now from Dublin Castle. Charlie, Ben Dunn was in the box for the 3rd time today. What was the tone of the cross-examination for him?
Well, Una, it was very tough indeed, and indeed it was probably some of the most toughest questioning that I've seen here at the 16 days of this tribunal. Repeatedly, Senior Counsel Michael Collins put it to Mr Dunn that perhaps when he was giving Charles Haughey this money, he was putting him in a compromising position or was perhaps looking for favours. Time and time again, Ben Dunn said no, that he wasn't looking for any favours from Charles Haughey. He was just basically doing it out of the goodness of his heart. At one stage, and it was very dramatic, Michael Collins said to him, "Did Mr Haughey ever acknowledge that he'd received this money for you? Did he ever thank you for it?" Ben Dunn was very silent for perhaps 10 or 15 seconds, and then he said, "I'd rather not answer that question." Michael Collins then pressed him a little further. "Are you sure he didn't? Was it not odd that he didn't acknowledge this?" To which Ben Dunn replied, "Yes, it was, I suppose, odd now with hindsight that he didn't acknowledge that."
Well, as we've seen, Kieran Haughey, Mr Haughey's son, was also in the witness box. How did he handle his appearance there today? Well,
again, Kieran Haughey is now the second of the Haughey's to have been here before this tribunal. Again, he got some very tough questioning this afternoon from Senior Counsel Dennis McCullough. He was asked about this £10,000 which he received from Ben Dunn. He said it was for consultancy work. Mr McCullough asked him, "Well, do you have any receipts for it? What type of arrangement was there?" And Mr Haughey basically said, you know, it was just something he was doing for him. He was also asked at the very end of this evidence, which David McCullough has also referred to, very interesting indeed, where it's now come up, indeed it was before us on Friday, this discrepancy where in 1992 Mr Haughey received this money from the Ansbacher deposits. It was basically he was securing a loan, but it's now come out again today. Dennis McCullough said, look, we have evidence here to show that in fact it was actually paid for out of the S8 account. When he was being led through his own evidence by his own senior counsel, Frank Clark, Mr. Kieran Haughey said as far as he knew it had been paid for by Celtic helicopters themselves. But Mr. McCullough said, no, we are showing you the documentation here which proves that in 1992 it was actually paid for out of the S8 account.
Charlie Bird, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for talking to us. Employment Minister